All right, we're going to go ahead and jump in because we do have a lot of content today. Just some housekeeping. We are recording this entire presentation, and we're also going to send out a one-pager afterwards. In the recording, we're also going to send out a copy of the slides that has the actual prompts I'm going to use. So don't feel like you need to take really, really good notes. We'll make sure that we get all these out to you afterwards. That way you can just kind of focus and follow along to the extent that you're able to. So what I really want to emphasize today is the goal of this presentation is to help you understand how you can take AI and start building tools that do things. We're not going to use any coding today. Everything that you watch me build would take 10 to 15 minutes to make yourself, at least as a starting point. And we'll talk about kind of where those 10 to 15 minutes is a good starting point and where you may want to then do some revision and testing afterwards. And then again, as I mentioned, the appendix at the end of the presentation has the exact steps that I'm going to follow. That way you guys don't have to worry about taking really copious notes. So just a quick poll I'm going to drop in the chat. I'll probably do a couple of them, but let's start with an easy one. Let's see here. I'm going to start just by asking how often you guys are using commercial LLMs right now. So you should have a poll that you can see. You can just quickly click on your answer and then hit submit. Give it a few more seconds. All right, so I'm going to close the poll. As it stands right now, about half of us are using it on a daily basis. A few of us are using it hourly, and some people are using it weekly. So that's a good starting point. That means that nobody is at least never or rarely, or even monthly. So that gives me something to work with. And then I'm going to ask you just one more poll here. Drop it in the chat. Is AI currently saving you time? So you mentioned you're using it. Now the question is like, is there ROI to it? Are you feeling it? Are you seeing it right now? Couple more seconds. All right, we're going to close out the poll. So this is good. 57% of you are saying some, not a ton. And 43% are saying yes, tons. That's good. That means that we've got the right audience. You guys are using some AI, you know that it's powerful, and you know that it can be helpful. However, this is where I think I've seen a lot of executives that I've coached and worked with get stuck, is they're kind of starting every session from zero. The results they're getting are kind of hit or miss. Some days they're really happy with what they got. Some days it was a huge waste of time, and they're not really feeling like there's a ton of consistency. And then I've also seen that people are very siloed in their AI approach. They have a tool that they're using that they have built for themselves or have gotten used to themselves, but it's not being leveraged by other people in the company. And so it's really benefiting just you as opposed to benefiting others in the organization. These are probably the three most common roadblocks I've seen people hit, or ceilings in their AI development and growth. And those are some of the things that we're going to tackle today as we go through this presentation. So this is really the core idea behind the whole hour. First, a prompt is a request. Many of you have been using prompts for a while now and probably have gotten quite good at them. A build is more like a digital coworker. This is where you are creating something that has the ability to do work on its own, have retained memory, provide value outside of just a one-on-one relationship with you. So prompting, you're supplying the context every single time. You have to remember the rules. You judge the output. The knowledge lives mostly in your head, and it scales basically as far as your patience goes. Whereas if we're building a bot or any kind of an AI tool, the context is configured one time. The rules are recorded and enforced. The output arrives in the format that you like. The knowledge is no longer in your head, it starts to live inside the tool. And importantly, anyone you share it with is going to get the same results. It's going to be very, very consistent. Whereas right now, if I was to give you each a prompt, let's say something that was specific to your business, like help me understand how to handle this difficult situation we're having with this particular customer. If you took that prompt and you had each one of your employees insert it into whatever commercial LLM they're using, if you don't have any kind of organizational structure built or any bots built, they're all going to get different answers, which means if everybody handled that same request, the customer would get very wildly different responses. The goal here is consistency and predictability, and that's really what a bot allows you to create. So every build is going to have the same 4 ingredients. And this is an important piece as you start to think about this, because if you're going to be building bots, these are the 4 ingredients you always have to supply in order to get it right. The first are the instructions. This is like programming, almost like the mind of the bot. This is where a lot of the action is going to happen. So you're going to set the role. What kind of experience or skill set or background is this bot bringing to the table? What are the goals that you're trying to have this bot achieve? What's the tone you want it to use? What to do when it doesn't know the answer? And many, many other boundaries and rules that we can get into. This really is at least 80% of the value of the bot. And a lot of the bots that I've seen people create, I'll inspect their instructions, and they're short. They're a half a paragraph. You're a bot to help our sales team sell more product. That's not going to get you the real results you're looking for. This is where you want a really robust, detailed set of instructions. And we'll talk more about this as we go. The second core ingredient is knowledge. You want the tool to have access to some information that it's going to be able to use in the work that it does. This could be as simple as a couple of documents. So if you're building a bot that answers HR questions, maybe you're arming it with a copy of your employee handbook and a couple of other benefits documents or policies and procedures documents. And maybe that's all the knowledge that bot happens to need. In other cases, you may be building a bot that needs access to mailboxes, SharePoint libraries, live websites, pricing playbooks, integrations into other tools, like being able to go into HubSpot and pull data down. Your bot can have as much knowledge as you want to give it access to. And this is its ability to get information that it's going to consider when it's providing responses and taking the actions that you want it to take. The third ingredient are tools. This is what is the bot allowed to do? So in a traditional prompting exercise, it's very one directional. You send a response, it writes back. That's all the bot can do. It can't do anything else. But when you're building an actual bot like what we're talking about, it can send emails. It can message people on Teams. It can create files, edit files, delete files. It can go into systems. It can take actions. It can run scripts. It really can do an enormous variety of tasks. There's really no limit to what it can do. There's some complexity, but there's no real hard limit on what these bots are able to do. But you have to give it those tools. You have to decide, what do I want this bot to be able to do and not be able to do? And we'll look at some examples of this, but like a good, easy one that comes to mind is maybe you want a bot that drafts emails, but doesn't send them. Maybe you're not quite comfortable enough that you want a bot just reading emails and automatically replying them. Maybe you want it to read the email and save a draft in your drafts folder. So that's the tool the bot is allowed to do. So it's not just what it can do, it's also being clear about what it can't do. And then finally, sharing. Who else is going to have access to this bot? Most bots are not built for a single user. Most bots are going to be built so that other people in your organization or your customers or the public or whoever else you decide is going to have access to that tool to get the same outcome that you would get if they were. And that's where you can really start getting scale. If you build an HR bot that only your HR employee is using to answer questions, you're not saving a ton of time. But if you build an HR bot that you publish to the entire company, and now basic simple questions can go to the bot instead of your HR person, that frees up your HR person's time. And it guarantees that they're all going to get a same consistent response every single time, and that it's going to be timely. That's kind of the scale factor that we're talking about. All right, so now we're going to talk about the roadmap. As we go through this, we're going to look at 3 different bots that I'm going to show you. We're going to start relatively simple. We're going to build what's called a custom GPT. A custom GPT is built in OpenAI's ChatGPT program. And the one we're going to build is an objection handling coach for our sales team. It's can be best. It could be used by one person. Could be used by a couple of people. Its job is just to be fast and help salespeople do what they're doing. The second one I'm going to walk you through is building out an agent and using a tool called Copilot Studio, which is part of the Microsoft ecosystem. In this particular case, we're going to build a HIPAA question and answer assistant that's going to live in Microsoft Teams, and it's going to be grounded in HIPAA policies and available to every member of the company. And then the final thing I'm going to show you is something a little bit more advanced. We're going to build what's called a skill in Claude. A skill is an independent task that is able to operate on its own on a set schedule. In this case, it's going to be monitoring a support mailbox, reading the mailbox, drafting what it can, and then flagging other team members as needed. So these are the 3 demos that we're going to build today. And I'll again share all my prompts with you afterwards so you have those. All right, so when you're starting off a process like this, the first thing you need to do is figure out what is the right platform for you. I'm going to show you 3 different platforms today, but there's even more. There's Gemini, there's Grok, there's many others. So when we're going through this, some of the things you need to be thinking about are who's going to be using it. That's going to give you a lot of influence in terms of who might be the what might be the right tool. So if you're using something like a bot that you want available to all your employees, and your company uses Microsoft Teams, Copilot Studio is a great suggestion because Copilot Studio automatically can publish to Teams without a lot of complexity. If it's really just for you and maybe 1 or 2 other people, ChatGPT is quick, easy, and it's you can share it without having to be part of an organization. You can just give them a link, they can click the link, and they can use it. If you are doing something really more complex that's going to be pulling data from a lot of different places, I think right now the leader in that is probably Claude. The next thing you have to think about is where does the data that I'm going to use live? If you're going to use any kind of sensitive data, I would strongly suggest using Microsoft Copilot Studio and keeping that data in your Microsoft 365 tenant. If you use Copilot Studio with things like SharePoint or Teams or email, the information it's accessing is never leaving the Microsoft 365 ecosystem and tenant. That's a great way to help ensure that data doesn't get stolen in transit or stored on some random server. It can be a really good way to help protect really sensitive information. If you're using something really sensitive like HIPAA data or COI for businesses that need to be CMMC compliant, ITAR, things like that, you may actually need to host your environment in a secure cloud, like a Gov cloud, which is basically a restricted cloud that has very, very high security around it. So that's also going to impact what tool you end up using. And then is it going to take action or just answer? If it's just going to provide responses and answers, that opens up the spectrum. But if you want it to be able to take actions, send emails, communicate with people, do things, you need to make sure you're selecting a platform that is going to have those integrations either natively or able to be configured. So right now, it's very easy to plug in things like Gemini and Claude into your 365 tenant, but Copilot is already part of 365, so it's even easier. So those are some of the things that you're going to think about as you go through the platform and decide what makes sense. All right, though, enough of me talking. Let's actually start looking at the first demo. So what I'm going to do is walk you through how I built this platform. So what would happen today? The prospect says, you're more expensive than the other guy, and the rep improvises. The good reps have great answers. The newer reps freeze, either go to discounts or go quiet for 3 days. What we want instead, we want to make sure every rep gets the same well-rehearsed response in 10 seconds in our voice, aligned with how we actually sell, with a question that keeps the conversation moving. So the 4 ingredients: we need instructions, we need knowledge, we need tools, and we need sharing. So that's how we're going to build it out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the builder. I'm going to skip the chat and go to configure, write the instructions, upload the knowledge, test it, tighten it, and then save and share. So here we go. Give me 1 sec. I want to make sure I'm sharing with audio so you guys can hear. All right, try that again. For your customers, but a coach for your own reps, for that moment where a prospect says we're too expensive and the rep has to answer right then, right now, without discounting. Watch how little of this is technical. So we'll start by opening up ChatGPT. Over here in the sidebar, we're going to go to GPTs.
and then we're going to click on Create. Now, there's two tabs in Create, which builds by chatting, and Configure, which is where the real control lives. I skip Create. It's charming, but it's slow. So what we're going to do here is we're going to provide a name and a description for the bot. This is just for the internal team. The instructions field is where the real meat is going to live and what's actually going to control the bot. So I'm going to call this bot Joe, the sales rep. And for description, this is our internal sales bot for overcoming sales objections. Again, this is not actually going to have any impact on the bot itself. It's just for your own internal team. What matters is what you put into this box here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste some instructions that I've already written. So you're an objection handling coach for our sales team. You're not a chatbot for customers. You coach the rep. When the rep gives you an objection, respond in exactly 4 parts. What the prospect is probably actually worried about in 1 sentence. A response the rep can say out loud in plain language under 60 words. The question the rep should ask next to keep the conversation moving. 1 thing not to say and why. And then some rules. Never lead with a discount. Price objections are usually value or risk objections. Use them with services, pricing, posture, and proof points that are in your knowledge files. If something is not there, say so and tell the rep who to ask. Match our voice, direct, warm, no hype, no jargon. If the objection suggests the deal is unqualified, say that plainly instead of coaching around it. And keep every response under 150 words. Now for the knowledge, there's 3 documents that we're going to use. I'm just going to pull those up now. So I've got 3 knowledge base files that I've created for the purpose of this. A service overview, an objection playbook, and a price conversation guide. These may be documents that you already have in your business, and if so, great. If not, you actually could create a bot to help you create these documents and then use those documents for a bot like this. But for today, I've already created these documents, and I'm just going to upload them and use them. Just to give you a sense of what these documents look like, if we open up the price guide, for example, what we see is how we talk about price, our posture, how we structure it, what's included versus what's extra, language that we have found works, language that does not work, and then our 1 rule. So again, this is a document that is designed to be an internal document that you've created as part of this process, but if not, you can always make up your own. You'll also notice that there's some confirm assessment, confirm with leadership. These are placeholder text that you would fill in with the information that you want it to have that's accurate and up to date. All right, so now the part people skip. I test it with the ugliest objection that we get. So what I'm going to say is in the preview pane, I'm going to copy and paste a message. Prospect says we are 40% more expensive than the provider they have now, and they are ready to sign with them. That's good, but look, it's a little long and it went soft on the qualifying question. So I go back to instructions and tighten 1 line. This is the actual work of building. It's editing, not engineering. So I'm going to go back to our instructions up here. And I'm going to insert something here. So I'm going to put in a new rule that simply says, let's renumber these real quick. always end with a question, and if the prospect has not defined the comparison, ask what is in the other scope before responding on price. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go back and ask our same objection here and see if we like the answer better. You can see it's a better answer. It's a little bit more on point to what we're trying to accomplish. But if this was a real bot that I was going to publish, I'd probably spend another 45 minutes or an hour or so continuing to run tests, tweak the instructions, and do this in an iterative fashion until I was really happy with the output that I created. However, for the purpose of this, I'm going to leave it here. So I'm going to go here and hit create. And if there was people in my company that I was sharing my ChatGPT license with that I wanted to add access to, I would do that here. Since I don't have that, what I'm going to do is instead, I'm going to come down here and there's some additional options. I can do anyone at Paragus that has a link that I can provide, or I could create a link that is available to anybody in the public. For the purpose of this, I'm going to use this option, and then I'm going to specify that they can chat. And I'm going to update this. And now I have a link, so I can copy that link, and I could share this link with just about anyone. And if I paste that in, what it's going to do is it's going to open up a ChatGPT instance with Joe, the sales rep. And anybody can now have a conversation with Joe, the sales rep, using that link. And again, I wouldn't share this publicly because the intent was for internal use, but you can see how you could create a link that you could then share with other members of your team, even if they weren't part of some ChatGPT subscription that you guys were using company-wide.
So what we just made, it's really designed to be for a single person at a time to use it. It's doing one job. It took minutes to create. Very little technical setup or admin approval. We didn't have to get any permissions or unlock any tools. It's great for just judgment and drafting work, and it was easy to iterate, edit, and retest instantly. And as I said, in about 45 minutes, you could go back and forth and continue to revise it until it was really happy. Where it would not be great. So if you don't have a paid version of ChatGPT, your ability to use that link would be pretty limited. You could use the free version of ChatGPT, but you're going to be capped and you might get ads and it's not going to be a great experience. So it's really kind of designed to be shared with other people who have a paid ChatGPT subscription. I would not put anything sensitive in there. It's technically outside your tenant, especially since you created that link that can be shared with anyone. I would definitely not I'd make sure that that knowledge base doesn't have any kind of sensitive proprietary pricing information that you'd be worried about getting out, because that's always a possibility. It's not designed to take action. It's just providing answers. It's just giving information. And there's no governance. There's no oversight or kind of like warning or watch guard that's monitoring what it's saying and making sure that it's accurate or testing with anybody else. So it's a very fast win, but it has the weakest controls. For a lot of use cases, this may be all you need, but it's not going to be the thing to handle client records or employees' data or anything that would need to be reviewed by an auditor. Before I move to the next demo, any questions on that demo, feel free to either mute and unmute your mic or post in our Q&A tool. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a compliance assistant that we're going to create. So here's how it's going to work. Today in this fictitious company, a staff member has a HIPAA question at 4:50 on a Friday. They ask the person next to them, they guess, or do nothing. Those are kind of their three options. The policy technically exists, but it's in a PDF nobody can find. So what we want instead, we want them to be able to ask in Teams in plain language and get an answer drawn from our actual policies, with the policy cited and a clear path to human when stakes are high. So again, we're going to provide instructions, knowledge, tools, and sharing. Couple of guardrails first. It is a guide, not the authority. No patient data should ever go in the question. We're going to make sure it's grounded and then make sure it cites where it gets its information. And we want escalation and logging on by default. So I'm going to use Copilot Studio to build this. I'll create the agent, we'll log the knowledge source, test it in the side panel, publish it in Teams, and then share it. So let's go ahead and take a look. All
right, now we're going to build a different kind of bot. in the last case, we created something that was really designed to be used by one or just a couple of our employees. Now what we're going to do is build a bot that's designed to be used by everyone. Let's say a staff member has a compliance question at 10 to 5 on a Friday, and the policy that they need to reference does exist in a PDF, but nobody can find it or even knows where to look. What we're going to do is put the answer where they already are, in this case, Microsoft Teams. We're going to do this by using a tool called Microsoft Copilot Studio. It's a bot building agent that is really good at building bots that are going to...
Just going to pause this.
All right, now we're going to...
and have it play full screen for you guys. Just give me 1 sec. All right, go back to that so you guys can see it again, and full screen this time.
All right, now in the one or just a couple of our employees used by everyone. Let's 5 on a Friday, and the policy that they do is put the answer where they already are, in this case, Microsoft Teams. We're going to do this by using a tool called Microsoft Copilot Studio. It's a bot building agent that is really good at building bots that are going to interact with and live in Microsoft environments. In this case, we're going to use Microsoft Teams and SharePoint. So we're going to start in a second, but before I build anything, I just want to remind everybody that because we're dealing with HIPAA, which is a very regulated subject matter, there's 4 rules that need to apply. First, it's a guide, never the authority. Second, no patient details should ever be shared in the question. Third, every answer should always cite the policy it came from. And fourth, anything involving a possible breach should go straight to a human. If you build a bot like this without one of those 4 rules in place, what you might actually be building is a liability. So now back to the demo, we're going to go ahead and click on Agent. And then just like in ChatGPT, we could use this descriptor builder to tell it what we wanted to build and have it make it for us. However, that's a little bit slower. For the purpose of this, I'm going to go up here and hit Create Blank Agent. I'm going to name my bot Sally the HIPAA bot. Improved. And then we're going to hit Create. And you'll see a GUI that looks somewhat similar to what we saw with ChatGPT, just a little bit different. So right here, I'm going to edit on the instructions, and I'm going to copy and paste some pre-written instructions into that box. And you'll notice that these are a lot like what I shared in the disclaimer. Answer only from documents, quote name is specific. If the documents don't cover the questions, direct them to the compliance officer, keep the answer short and practical, and some hard rules. So I'm going to go ahead and save those. What you'll also see is that there's some additional settings that we have access to. We can control which AI model or large language model we want to use. I'm going to use ChatGPT 5.5, but there's other OpenAI. There's also some Anthropic models in here if you want to use one of Claude's models. And you'll have access to what's available based on what your admin has allowed. Like, for example, you can see we're not allowed to use anything made by X or Grok. And we also don't have access to this right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the knowledge section. So here, unlike in the last bot where we uploaded static information, instead we're going to give it access to a live knowledge base. The difference is with static data like the PDFs or the Word documents that we uploaded, if anything was to change, we'd have to remember to update those documents as well. Otherwise, the bot could be giving the wrong information to our sales team. By using a live SharePoint library that is where we store the production files, we accomplish 2 things. One, we ensure that they're always using the latest, most up-to-date files. And second, the way this bot will work is it won't actually let anybody access the files unless they have permissions to that SharePoint library. So there's some built-in security that gets applied as well. So I'm going to click on the Add Knowledge button here. And then from there, I'm going to select SharePoint. And then I'm going to go to the SharePoint library that I've created for the purpose of this demo. And in that library, I've put a couple of documents, a HIPAA staff FAQ, an incident escalation, and a staff policy. So I'm going to click this button that says copy link here, then come back over here, paste that link in and hit add. And if there was additional SharePoint libraries I wanted to add, I could do that as well. In this case, I'm just going to leave it to the one. I'm going to hit Add Agent. And if there was a web site that I wanted to point it to, like maybe there's some really good information on a certain website that we follow that has good HIPAA regulation, we could share that. For the purpose of this, though, I'm just going to leave the rest of this alone so we can keep on with the demo. So let's start off with a nice easy one. And again, this is where we do testing before we move anything into production. And so I'm just going to give it a fairly easy question. All right, so I'm just going to give it a fairly easy question. I'm going to paste in here. A patient's husband is asking for her lab results. Can I give them to him? And let's see what it does with that. Notice it cited this section. This is not a declaration. That's the difference between an answer a staff member can act on and one they have to verify. Now, the more important test, something it should refuse. Let's ask it, what should I do about patient J. Miller's billing dispute? You'll notice that it pushed back on me providing a patient name and immediately routed me to a person. That behavior came from the instructions, not the platform. We had to write it. So from here, we could then publish this bot. And when we publish it, we can do a few things. At first, we can publish it to just be something that we have access to. But then later, if we wanted to publish it to Microsoft Teams, there's an option for us to share it with a group, the entire company, a certain channel, or other things within the company. What you may run into, though, are things like this, which are there are admin settings that have to be configured first before you're able to do some of these tasks. The version that I'm using right now doesn't have access to do that. But if I was in a licensed account that had permission to do so, I'd be able to publish it, and then I could select from there who I wanted to share it with. The end result is a bot that gets embedded into Microsoft Teams. And I'll just show you an example from our own tenant that's a real live account. So if I was to go into here and I clicked on HR, Allie is an HR bot who handles questions for us internally. You can see that she has a name and a headshot. In her case, we've even pinned her. You could also search for her up here if you wanted to find her. And then you can ask her questions. What is our policy on bereavement, for example? And she takes a minute to think, which is kind of like if she was a real person, them taking the time to maybe look up the answer or to type it out for you. And then she comes back and say, our bereavement policy is outlined in our employee handbook. Immediate family loss, you can miss 3 regular shifts of work without the loss of pay. A pet loss, you can miss 1 shift of work without the loss of pay. These days are separate from other types of PTO. And if you have unique circumstances or need more time, it'd be best to discuss the options with your manager and HR so they can support you appropriately. If you'd like, I can share some ideas on how to manage your time and workload during this difficult period. Would that be helpful? So this is an example of a bot that probably took us maybe 3 to 4 hours to build, and then access to 2 different SharePoint libraries where she has documentation she needs to answer questions like this, and was then published out to our staff using the Copilot Studio tool so that they could access her through that form.
Perfect. And before I continue to the last demo, any questions on using Copilot Studio to build a bot? Again, feel free to either unmute or stick it in the Q&A tool. So what we just made and what it isn't. This one is going to be strong where everyone is going to get the same answer in team. It's going to inherit our Microsoft permissions, which makes security nice and easy and clear. And it's going to be easy to control and update it. IT can monitor the bot, they can monitor the usage, it can be governed, it can be audited. We can even write a governance log if we need to for any kind of compliance reasons. Where it's going to be weak, speed, licensing and approval might add a day. One-person experiments, it's heavier by design. It's not great for creative or judgment or kind of heavy work. It's really more of a Q&A style bot. And then if it needed something to live outside of Microsoft, it's not going to work. It's really built to be inside the tenant. So this can be a great tool for an example like this. But now let's look at kind of the third and final demo that we're going to look at. This is where we take another step forward. So in this, let's imagine a scenario where we've got support emails piling up, and what we want instead is a tool to help us with that work. And that's what we're going to see. So again, the skill is the process. That's going to be the thing that we build. Connectors are how it's going to get the information to do what it needs to. And then the human is going to be a release valve at the end, which is really important. So we'll describe the workflow. We'll let Claude write the skill for us. We don't need to know how to code it, which makes our lives a lot easier. We're going to read what it wrote to make sure it's right, install it and connect the mailbox, and then run it in draft mode only.
All right, so for this third demo, what we're going to do is something a little bit different. In the first two demos, we created tools that answered questions. And while that is helpful, it'll reduce some emails in our inbox, maybe get employees' answers a little bit faster. What we're going to do now is create a tool that is actually capable of doing work more autonomously. In this particular case, we're going to target a support mailbox that receives emails from customers asking questions. And we're going to create a bot that can help to respond to some of those questions, and then the ones that it can't respond to kind of get information that it needs from other people to be able to help it respond to those ones. Ideally, reducing some labor and making people's lives a little bit easier. So to do this, we're going to use Claude Cowork. And before we begin, there's a couple of prerequisites I'll just show you very briefly. We do need to enable something called the Claude Skills Builder, which is under Skills here, Skill Creator, and we turn that on. The second thing is you will need a connector that goes to Microsoft 365. As you can see, I already have mine here built. You would have to build one, though, if you were going to do this. It's not hard, but just wanted to call that out. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and drop in our prompt. And what you can see is that we're going to ask it to build a skill that works our support mailbox. For each unread message, summarize what the customer wants in one line, then sort it into one of three buckets. Bucket 1 is answerable from our documented answers, draft a reply in our support tone, and leave it in the drafts for a human to send. Never send it yourself. Bucket 2 needs one fact from a colleague. Resolve the owner from the routing table. Only people named there may be contacted. Draft an email to that person with one specific question, the client's words quoted, and their deadline, and leave it as a draft. If the topic does not map to a named owner, do not guess, flag it instead. In the bucket 3, anything about billing disputes, security, contract terms, or angry customers, don't draft anything. Flag it for a human immediately with a one-line reason. For every run with a summary, how many messages in each bucket, which people are waiting on, and anything else that looked unusual. All right, we're going to go ahead and let that run. And as you can see, it's got some questions it wants me to answer. First, where does the support mailbox live? It's an Outlook shared mailbox. That's correct. 2, where do the documented answers live? So we're going to say they live in SharePoint, and we'll provide it that link. And the routing table, topic named, does one exist? And we'll say that that also is in our SharePoint file. And then how often should the skill run? We're going to say for now on demand only, but we could schedule this to run every 15 minutes, every hour, however we wanted to do it.
You'll see here I've significantly speeded up the process so you guys don't have to wait and watch it work.
So it's going to ask, can it create something in this? I'm going to say yes.
It's got a question for me. So what mailbox am I trying to use? And it's going to be something else. It's going to be demo@paragusit.com. You can see, though, that it did guess at some actual mailboxes in our environment, which is pretty important. So it already searched my SharePoint libraries and found the document that it thinks is the right document. And in fact, it actually is the right document. So I didn't even have to provide it. It somehow discovered it all on its own. So I'm going to say, yes, this is the intended source. All right, so now it's asking, can it save the skill? We're going to say save. All right, so it has completed it. We're going to hit update on this one. Now it's just updating some tasks. So what's saying is that we can ask it to work the support mailbox to run it, and it's recapping what it's going to do. So let's go ahead and give it a trial run. So what it's asking here is it wants to use Outlook to create a draft. So I'm just going to allow that. And I could allow this for all tasks. I just have to change some settings. But for now, I'm just going to allow it once. We'll allow this one. Allow this one. Allow. Okay, so it has completed its work. It has summarized it for me here, but it's also summarized it here. So bucket 1, drafted replies. These are 2 emails that it was able to review the information and provide a response for. Bucket 2 was where they needed a question that it sent out. And so if we go, and then bucket 3 were the ones that needed to be flagged. So waiting on Dulcie Bean, still open, not asked, and then unusual. So just some notes here about some things that happened. So then if we go to the actual mailbox itself, all right, so now let's take a look at what it actually did. So I'm going to bring up my mailbox here. And what you can see is it created 3 draft messages. The first is directly back to a client, and it's a response to the client. You can write their email below. They had said, we're running a shift on Sunday at the end of the month. I want to make sure you guys know if something cools down. What's the after hours process? Second, we have a new estimator starting. We need to get our email set up. So here's the after hours process pulled from the FAQ document, and here's the steps we need to set up their new employee. Please send them to us at least 3 business days so we can get that taken care of. So if I think this email is great, I can just go ahead and hit send on it. If I want to change it, I certainly can. Then we've got another one here to Priya. They'd emailed over saying, I got a new phone. Do I need to come into the office? And it's saying, no, we can do this right from your office. And it's just giving them the steps for what they need to do to get it set up. And then there's an email to me, and I was listed as the escalation point, which is why. And the email is just saying, is the Thursday evening file replacement for camera insurance still on? And what outage window should we give them? So I could reply to this email. That would then give the bot the answer it needs to then go and draft a response to the actual customer who wrote this in earlier today. And obviously, there's a lot I could tweak about this. I could have it send it not from me, but send it from the demo mailbox. I could have it message me on Teams and sending me emails. I could schedule it to run an automated schedule. There's a lot I could do, but you get the sense of how powerful these things can be. And just in a few minutes, what we've built can already start saving me time. If you had a few hours to spare, you could go quite a bit further and really customize and tweak this quite a bit.
So as we look at kind of this particular tool, this is going to be great at repeatable multi-step work that involves lots of different systems. Where you have a process that you can write it down, but you hate doing, or it's a time-consuming process and you don't have the resources to commit to it. It's especially helpful when it's portable and reviewable. It's going to it needs a readable file that it can reference. And then it's great at doing strong reasoning on messy, unstructured input. It can take a whole variety of random emails from customers that are not going to be written the same way with no consistent formatting. And it's going to be really good at parsing from that. What are they actually trying to do? Match that to an FAQ, get an answer, provide it, or identify I don't have the answer, and then reach out to the person in the company who does, get them the answer, and then bring it back into the customer's response. Where it won't be good is anything that is not defined clearly. If I don't have a really good FAQ for it to reference, I don't want it just guessing. I don't want it just making up my after hours process and telling my customer, this is what you do after hours, but it isn't right, and then it doesn't work, and then the customer is unhappy. So you do need to have good structured processes that you can use to provide it. It's weak at unsupervised action, so autonomy should be earned. In other words, if I was building this bot for a customer or for ourselves, we would probably run it like this for about 2 to 3 weeks. And if every single draft it wrote was perfect, we would then maybe give it the permission to start sending emails out on its own. However, if we were making edits to at least 10% or 20% of the drafts it wrote, we'd keep refining the instructions until the drafts were really consistently right. Then we may give it some more autonomy and let it operate a more unsupervised way. I would not have this be the front door for non-technical staff. I'm not sure that's going to be the best outcome. And it's not good for compliance answers without some sort of review step in place. And that's why we put those restrictions around security and billing and things like that. But as you can see, these are pretty easy tools to build. I've probably built going on 40 of them that do all kinds of different things, and they're all running on my computer at all times. You might have noticed at one point a little black box popped up on my screen. That was one of my bots trying to do something on my behalf because it was set to run every half an hour, and that half an hour window just came up while we were talking. So there's an incredible lot you can do. One thing that we're also seeing people start to do is if they're building a lot of these bots to run, they're starting to build them on a separate computer. I may not want that bot interrupting my workflow every day while I'm working. And if I'm running a lot of these on the same computer, it could get a little bit cumbersome. So we're actually seeing more and more companies getting separate computers that they're using just to run their bots on. And so Dulcie Bean may have his actual production computer, and then Dulcie Bean may have his automated computer. And on my automated computer, I have my Cloud Cowork tool. I've got my 40 skills running, and all day long, that computer is doing its own thing, but logged in as me with my permissions and my access so it can do the things it needs to do, while I'm simultaneously running in parallel on my own computer. And we can share things like it's working on my email mailbox, but I occasionally look at my email mailbox as well. So I could open up my email mailbox and mail could be moving around. A draft could be showing up in my folder. That's because the bot is kind of running in parallel on another system, but accessing the same mailbox I'm accessing. And those are some of the kind of more advanced things you can do. But when I say advanced, not really advanced. These are not like you need to go to school, you need to know how to code. This is like you need a few more hours and a little bit more patience. And that's all it takes to do a lot of this stuff. So just a quick side-by-side comparison. We looked at custom GPTs. It's great for one person, one job. It lives in ChatGPT. You can build it in minutes. Anyone with a paid plan can use it. They don't have to be inside your tenant. It's not going to take actions. It doesn't need IT involved. And this is a great place to just experiment. If you've built nothing, build a custom GPT first. It's like my first bot for bot building. Copilot Studio. This is where if you want to build things for your whole company. I often build things when I was first starting out in GPT first, got it working the way I wanted to, and then actually migrated it to Copilot Studio because it was faster and easier for me to play in GPT than it was for me to play in Copilot. But once I had my instructions and my knowledge and I liked the product, I then imported it into Copilot Studio, published it to my entire team, and that way everybody else can benefit from it. And then the Claude skill is a whole nother ball of wax. This is when we start to get into action-oriented tasks that are doing things on our behalf, sometimes autonomously, maybe even without human oversight. So this is going to be great for repeatable processes. It's going to take, an hour to initially build and then some tuning. And that tuning is going to be reflective of how complex it is. If it's a really, really simple bot, the tuning may just be an hour or two. If it's something more complicated and you want to make it fully autonomous, you may need to dedicate a little bit of time to that to get that right. Who can use it? Anybody who has permissions to run the workflow. The data boundary is going to be wherever you connect it to. You'll decide what it's going to have access to. It can definitely take actions. You may need IT involved for things like setting up your 365 connector or other types of system access. And then if you've got a task that's repetitive, this is probably where you want to be. So 4 ways this can go wrong. First, shadow IT, or shadow AI, I should say. If you've got 40 employees quietly building 40 different AI assistants on personal accounts with company data inside, this is going to become a nightmare. There's no consistency. There could be data boundaries that are being violated. There could be, if there's turnover, anything that thing was doing is going to get lost. There's no map of where this is, how it works. If you're just building in demo mode, great. Build it in custom GPT, play with it. But as soon as you're ready to bring something in production, have a system and a structure. Pick a platform, pick a set of guidelines, build these things in a way that there's some documentation around them so that it isn't just each person doing it on their own. And this is where if you don't have AI governance in place, you're really going to have some struggles here. The second is the wrong data in the wrong place. Security really does matter. We're hearing more and more about AI breaches, and you really need to think about what kind of data am I using and what's the right place to store it, and then what AI can I use with that. When nobody owns it, if there's just kind of these things in the wild that there isn't a clear, it's my job to monitor it, it's my job to make sure it's running, it's my job to make sure the documents are up to date, then you're going to end up with tools that don't provide a lot of value. And then the worst I see is people don't check the output. They spend an hour building it. They're so excited it did something cool. They just publish it. Don't do that, please. Please run those tests. I showed you just a couple of very brief tests, but you should run many, many more tests. Take the worst possible question you can imagine. Take the worst outcomes. Really push these things before you press play, because you just run the risk of creating a really bad experience that may be hard to recover from. And once people have that bad first impression, it's hard to regain that trust and credibility later. So we talked a little bit about picking your first build before you log off. So find the thing that you either find yourself explaining over and over again, the thing that you can easily write down the rules for, or the thing that you can make the smallest useful version of. I'd really encourage you, while this is fresh in your mind, if you haven't done this before, do it this week. Do it by the end of the day tomorrow. Just take something, even if you just play with custom GPT, the tool, do something just to get the muscle memory built and just start to figure out how these mechanics work. If you've already done something before, go up one level to add one level of complexity, either by changing platforms, making it do something else, adding in some tools. Expand your capacity and just keep expanding it as you go. What to remember, prompting asks, building configures, we talked about at the very beginning. Every build is instructions, knowledge, tools, sharing. Those are the 4 essential ingredients. You can't do anything without them. Make sure you match the platform to the audience, and then write down the process, then automate it. Make sure you have that documentation to rely on. 3 builds is a good afternoon, so we're going to kind of leave it there. But as we go, just keep thinking about, as my business grows, what are my readiness gaps? What are the rules that people need to follow? And what's going to be measurable adoption as AI starts to hit my business? How do we really start to go from this was kind of cool and exciting and fun, and we did something interesting or kind of cool, to we're actually doing something that's having a meaningful, transformative impact on our company? So we do have a program. It's called the AI Transformation Framework. It's a sister company of ours that is designed to help bring businesses through the AI transformation process. It starts with the foundation building, not the stuff that we just did. We got to do the fun, exciting, cool, sexy stuff. But before you get to do that, you got to do the foundational work. And we skipped over that today, but it is essential. This is the AI readiness assessment. This is the strategy roadmap, and this is the governance. You get this right, your AI will be so much more successful, and your implementations will get a much better ROI. The second stage is phase 2. This is where we build, but we build intentionally. We figure out where's the best use case, what's going to get us the best ROI, and then we work backwards from that to get those bots in action as quickly as possible so that we can actually feel and measure and track the progress. And then in addition to that, we get ongoing support. A coaching session every single month with our entire executive leadership team. You get one-on-one coaching sessions, access to monthly state of AI briefings so you can see what's happening in the world of AI, and direct access to AI experts who can answer any questions that you have as you go through your process and build tools. If that is something that's interesting to you, we'd be happy for you to go and book a 30-minute call. I didn't insert the booking link here. I'll stick it in the chat right now. But I'll pause there before we end and see if anybody has any final questions while I stick that link in the chat. Any questions at all about how to build a bot, where to start, maybe problems you've run into when you've tried yourself? All right. Well, if we don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and leave it here. We will send you out a copy of these slides. In those slides, you'll be able to see all the prompts that I used, as like I'm showing you right now, so that you can recreate what I just did. There's also some sources and links. We'll send you a kind of a one-page guide that you can follow. And then in the chat, I have dropped a link to our AITF program, which is the AI Transformation Framework program that if you're looking to really accelerate AI in your business, and you know that this could have an impact, but you're just not sure where to start and need some governance, this is the program for you. We've had an amazing success with it so far. We've got, I think, 12 different businesses enrolled in it, and it's only been live for about 3 months. So feel free to check that out. And otherwise, I want to thank everybody for being here today, and we'll get you out these materials as quickly as we can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.